Gravel strip operations are pretty much a staple up here in the north and in central remote Australia. Yet so many students get little to no exposure operating on them. So, in this episode, I'm going to talk all things gravel strips, including strip inspections, ground ops, takeoffs, and, of course, landings. Let's talk about all that and so much more coming right up. So strap in and let's get into it.
Good morning, 714, North Armella, 7 PB with altitude.
Coordinating, Halen, I'm running bank power, bank pressure rolling at 30 degrees. That's 30 degrees there. Sunrise star 9000, 1013, K5 25.
G'day everyone and welcome to episode 136 of the Flight Training Australia podcast. No matter what you fly or where you fly at, this is the podcast all about flight training and flying in Australia and beyond. G'day, I'm your host, Trent Robinson. Welcome to another fantastic episode. Apologies for last week. I did have plans to give this episode then, but I caught the dreaded Rona yet again. Well, it's only the second time, but once is enough, I'd say. So, yeah, COVID definitely had other ideas. I was at the open day on the weekend, started feeling a bit funny when I got home. And, yeah, sure enough, Monday wasn't going to happen. And I thought I'd be back by Wednesday, but no, it just floored me. So, yeah, pretty nasty stuff. And not the best timing at all. Had a few students from interstate, which caused chaos, and I was just feeling devastated. But you can't control these things. We did get some flying done just yesterday, over the weekend and Saturday, so at least we recovered a little bit. But to the guys, thank you for your understanding and your patience, and thankfully you are coming back anyway, so all is not completely lost. And I look forward to flying with you again then. Oshkosh wrapping up for another year. Did you go? If so, are you listening to me in the States right now? Or you're that committed you've already flown back? But look, definitely on my list to go back. I've discussed it before. I first went in 1991, probably before a lot of you were even born. But it is definitely something you need to experience at least once, I think. Sadly, a few deaths again this year with aircraft crashes associated with flying to the event. I don't know the exact details yet. It is a hectic process getting in and out of there, and I don't know that was directly related to the causes this year, but just my condolences to those who lost family and friends. It's just terrible news. Nothing worse than going to a fun event like that and that happening. On a brighter note, though, Exercise Pitch Black enters its final week here in Darwin. As you listen, hundreds of people have flown interstate, if not thousands, to visit and take part, take photos. And it's been well covered on the news and the media. Everyone's just been loving it. We had the awesome Mindle Beach flyby. It's called a flyby. It's not an air show, although there is a display at the end. But all the countries get together, the tankers with the aircraft hanging off the sides. Everyone else does their displays. They do a few flybys, a few beat ups of the beach. It's just a great atmosphere. There were tens of thousands of people down there. And it was just fantastic to see, and everyone enjoying aviation. The highlight, of course, was the Italian Navy Harrier and the F-35B. They did a formation hover and a display. Just so cool seeing two aeroplanes like that just hanging off the beach, off midair. It was like watching an episode of the Avengers or something with their spaceships hanging off the beach. It's moving into that new realm. I know the Harriers have been around for a long time, but we're definitely going to start seeing a bit more of that, more aircraft with this VTOL functionality. The Korean F-15s carving it up. F-22, only a short display, didn't do too much, but the Aussies wrapped everything up at the end with the F-18 Rhino, just carving it up with impressive display, including plenty of flare releases, making for some fantastic photos. And then, as I said, on the weekend, on Saturday, we had the Pitch Black Open Day, almost 30,000 people in attendance. I think that was a record. And hats off to the RAF, the air show display team and everything. So well organized. The transport to and from, everyone was parking without too much drama. There were just buses nonstop running people back and forward. Everyone was coming in, smiles on their faces, kids having a ball. getting their little passports stamped, and people collecting patches and badges, like swapping Pokemon cards and baseball cards and stuff. It was really great to see. It was like being on scout camp again, swapping badges with everybody. It was just a great day. And what a collection of aeroplanes too. Like, I just don't think any air show or anything else has a collection like what we had here between all the forces. We had the Typhoons, the Gripens, the Rafale, the F-50s, F-35, A's and B's, F-22, the Harriers, the F-18s of various varieties, plus all the tankers, the A400 Airbus. Just brilliant. And everyone had a ball. All the crew were awesome, taking photos, entertaining, just what you want to see. And, of course, I had a stand at the big marquee. I was joined by Dan Bolton, a.k.a. that Molar guy. We represented Pasquale, and actually, whilst I'm talking about Dan, just released a fantastic new episode on the weekend. He is got a very exciting trip coming up where he's going to be going to Canada to witness the final Martin Mars flying boat take its final flight to its new home at the British Columbia Museum. They've got 2 aircraft formerly operated by Coulson's for the fire bombers. They've been pretty much inactive for the last, I think it's nearly 8 years. So Dan is got very special permission from home to rush on over, and he's going to be doing a bunch of other stuff as well. So keep an eye out for that. If you don't follow Dan, look up that Mellow guy on Instagram, follow him there, and he's going to be getting some very cool stories and footage and photos sharing with us all over the coming weeks. But, shared a stand with him, had a wonderful time meeting all of you that flew up, a bunch of you that had come up and telling me stories about your flying. And that's just what it's all about, just talking aviation, being around cool stuff, and everyone having a great time. So fantastic to meet you all. Thank you for coming. And for those that are interested, I know a lot of people are already planning on their next trip. Pitch Black is a biannual event, so every 2 years. It's typically mid-July to early August, pretty much. It's going to move around the last 2 weeks of July, first week of August, something like that. But every 2 years, so put it in your calendar. You can get up here, experience the Middle Beach Fly Pass, the open day, and what it's like just sitting at the end of the runway, having these jets rip over your head day and night, seeing the afterburners. Darwin, right now in the dry season, we're having absolutely stunning sunsets. And if you are not part of the Exercise Pitch Black Facebook page, there's a community group there. It's grown. It was like hundreds of people, then a few thousand. It's grown into the tens of thousands, this page now. And the photography of some of the photographers is just mind-blowing. There's some the other day with just the sunset, the heat of the air and everything coming off the aircraft. Just some of the best photos I've seen ever, I reckon. So definitely get on, check that out, and make sure you're here in 2 years' time. All right, enough of that. Let's talk about today's episode. And we're diving into this because I am seeing more than more everyone coming up to try and fly on a gravel strip, and it's just not knowing what to do. And it's just crazy that the country is girt by sea and filled in with dirt. And there are dirt airstrips all over Australia, especially central and remote. And the fact that we're not teaching students who are now graduating as commercial pilots on how to operate on these strips, it doesn't sound like a big deal, does it? But it can be, because it's very easy to cause damage to your props, flick stone chips up on gear, struts, underbelly, horizontal stabilizers, etc. And we need to be teaching these skill sets. This is part of operating in Australia and what a license is going to be used. So flight schools, stop buying fragile, sensitive airplanes and start teaching your students how to operate in all conditions that they're expected to do as per their competency of training. So let's talk about how to work in dirt strip environments, gravel strips, etc. And the first thing we need to really do is plan our arrival. So a strip inspection. Now, a strip inspection has many uses. You can do a strip inspection on a sealed strip. If you're unfamiliar, if you're worried about the surface conditions, you might be checking out the wind conditions. You may be scaring away animals or livestock. Or you might just, could be something else, whatever it is. But a strip inspection skills really stems back from a precautionary search and landing. Now, a precautionary search and landing is a course for an airstrip that we're landing on that's not an actual airstrip. It's an unprepared surface, so we need to try and have a bit of a look at it and check things out. So if you remember when you did prec search, I know for some places it is a very rushed and skipped through lesson, but it is such good handling. It's such a good skill set that you should be learning how to do it properly, and it's not something we should just be rushing over. So if you aren't getting your prec search and landing training done properly, ask your instructor to take you through it and how to do it properly. So, like I've said, pretty much all the flights I've been doing on my GA transition course lately, no one's really sure what to do and how to configure. So let's talk about setting up for the strip inspection first. And the key thing here is we're ideally looking for stability. We're trying to set up an aircraft that's nice and stable when it's low to the ground so that we're flying along the runway length, holding height, and we can focus on what we're actually there for, and that is inspecting the strip. So we want to get onto downwind and just a normal height. So normally prec search, you'll start maybe 1,000 feet, and then you'll come down to 500, and then you'll come down to 200 or 300, something like that. We're just going to do a 1,000-foot circuit, and we're going to come straight down to the inspection height. So 200 to 300 feet. As safe, I use different heights for the same airstrip, sometimes because it's just gusty. So being a bit lower is not good because we're smashing around, we're close to trees, and there's just no need to push it that much. Other times it's calm and settled, so we can be a little bit lower and check things out. And I can tell you that we did one the other day, and my students still missed the 3 grey wallabies that were sitting just under the undershoot of the runway. So even then, you're not necessarily going to pick something up. So as low as is safe to do so. So back to downwind, we want to set the aircraft up. Now, it doesn't matter whether we're flying a 152 or a 210 or a Diamond 40 or whatever else it is. We want to be somewhere around the 20 inches, 2,000 RPM, your typical circuit power setting for your aircraft. All right. So whatever you'd normally use on downwind, that's what we should be. You want to be gear down if you're not already, and usually a stage of flap, be it 10 degrees or flap approach, something like that. From there, we want to trim the aircraft for straight and level. Most likely, this is nothing you aren't normally already doing on downwind, I would have thought. Yet, here we are talking about it because it's not what's going on. Now, this just needs to be done with enough time to get it done before it's time to turn base. So some people, again, leaving it too late, and by the time they get it sorted, we're nearly 3-4 miles away. Or we're turning base unconfigured, so we're not trimmed properly. Why is that a problem? We'll get there in a sec. All right, so once we're configured, we want to turn base. Normal position, nothing changes. Bring your power back to 15 inches, 1,500 RPM as applicable, of course, plus or minus our wind allowances and all the normal things. We don't take any more flap, and we don't touch the trim. All right, so we're bringing the power back. The nose might want to drop a little bit. Just hold it with back pressure. Turn final as per normal. Establish 500 feet AGL. And we want to line up just slightly right of the runway. So where the gable markers are, you should have your flyover clearance area. We just want to be down that. Now, there might be trees and other things. So again, you've got to factor this in. And this is what I'm talking about, 200 to 300 feet as appropriate. And if it starts getting really rough, just play it safe and just be a little bit higher. But this is good information because this is telling you the conditions. It's what's going to be like when you come into land. Now, it should be the same speed this whole time. So in the 210, we're usually up 90, 100 knots. On the final line, as we approach our 200 to 300 foot mark, we reintroduce our power to 20 inches for the 210 or 2,000 RPM or whatever it is you're flying. And we should still be 90 to 100 knots. So now we trimmed it on downwind. If we did our job properly, power plus attitude plus performance equals no, it doesn't. Power plus attitude plus configuration equals performance. There we go. And that's the Rona talking. And now we're trimmed. We're stable. The aeroplane can fly straight down the runway. We can look out the side window and then out the front and out the side and out the front and out the side and out the front, and not be worried about wrestling the aeroplane and trying to maintain height and everything else and battle the elements. All right. Now, yes, you might need a little bit of extra power if it's gusty. All those normal things apply, of course, but it should be a relatively straightforward process. Now, once we've gone 3/4 of the way down the runway, we should have seen enough. If the runway is no good now, there's no point looking at the last bit. So full power, go around, clean the aeroplane up back to 1,000 feet, and then we fly a normal circuit or go somewhere else if we're not happy. All right, so that's how we configure for the strip inspection. Now, what about the strip inspection itself? What are we looking for? Well, surface condition is obvious, isn't it? We want to assess the runway surface for any soft spots, for ruts. Now, up in the wet season, big problem. Obviously, water ruts going across runways, soft edges, debris can be washed onto the runway, especially if there's been any localized flooding in the area. So looking for all that sort of thing. Particular attention to any loose gravel or muddy, wet, soggy patches, large rocks or termite mounds, all that sort of stuff. Trees, bushes, wildlife, definitely. Okay, so even if it's got nothing to do with dirt strips or anything else, it might have just rained on a bitumen asphalt strip. There's grass to the edge of the runway. Usually that's where the flowers grow. That's what brings in the wildlife, so keep an eye on it. We want to keep an eye on the length and the width. Make sure that the runway is serviceable. Now, a lot of the strips up here are very averagely marked. The gable markers are well and truly used to be painted white drums, but they're now rusted and half decomposed. So you need to be sure where the runway is. There's generally no paint. There's no center line. So you need to work that out peripherally with your eyes and make sure it's suitable for your aircraft performance requirements. Now, remember, if you want to work out the runway length, nice stable airspeed, half airspeed times time, or you can do it the other way around, airspeed times half time. Either way, you're going to get the same answer. So if you're doing 100 knots and it's taking you 20 seconds, 1,000 meters. All right. Obstructions. What about on the approach to the airstrip? Trees, power lines, fences, etc. Keep an eye on those. Slope and gradient. Wind conditions. As always, wind should never really be catching you out. The number of people that do not look at wind socks when they're on final blows me away. Excuse the pun. All right. But that's literally what will happen because they're not allowing for the wind and they're going to drift and they go, oh my God, where did that wind come from? It's like it's been there the whole time. If you're going below a tree line, the wind's going to change. Allow for that. All right. And when you're also doing the strip inspection, as I said, because the markings and aren't very good, make particular note of where the airstrip actually starts. If it's not right at the beginning, it might be displaced and there's not going to be big arrows and everything else showing you where it all is so that you know what you're aiming for on the next approach. All right, so for the strip itself, when we're landing, stabilized approach is really, really important. If we're going in amongst trees or any other hazards like that, you might want to come in a little bit quicker than normal. Generally, full flaps is what you should be doing. Again, though, if there are strong wind shear conditions and that sort of stuff, like in the 210, I'll typically use flap 20 because the drag can be sometimes too much and it adds a lot of burden, especially if a little bit heavier, to trying to arrest any sink. So allow for that, allow for the extra speed, but again, it's still a stabilized approach. If an aeroplane is coming in too fast, it is carrying too much speed. Too much speed equals too much lift equals too long down the runway before it eventually washes off and settles onto the runway, which means we've gone well beyond our nominated touchdown point. Okay, so if we add extra speed by not taking normal flap, there's still a limit as to how much extra speed you should have. And it should only be another 5 odd knots, 5 to 10 maximum. All right, so make sure you factor that in. Touchdown, we should be nice and smooth. We should be lowering the nose wheel onto the runway gently, especially if it's a little bit rougher. We don't want to be damaging anything, so slower speed if possible. And again, this is something that it's a great skill set to learn, because a lot of people will just plonk it down. As soon as the main wheels are on the ground, they go, oh, we're here. Let go of the nose wheel and go smack. All right, lower the nose wheel. I'll tell you what, if you come up here in Darwin, you watch the F-35s at the moment, they land with such a high alpha or high angle of attack, the nose is way off, and they just cruise on down the runway, holding the nose off, and slowly it comes down. It's beautiful to watch. All right, and that's what we should be doing on rough strips as well. During the rollout, full weight, full back pressure. Okay, keep the weight off the nose wheel as best you can to minimize any damage, and digging into softer ground as well. If we're doing soft field landing, that's absolutely prudent and all that. And then we get onto the ground. All right, so when we do this, what we need to remember is landing straight is really important. If we land on the gravel and we land crooked, it is more forgiving than bitumen for sure. But again, you can tell people that are soft and lazy with their feet and don't land straight because we're landing crooked, then the aeroplane starts to slide. And because they're not used to that, they're used to just sort of snapping around straight, they tend to overreact. And then the games begin. Then we start skidding all over the place. You must relax, smooth, gradual control inputs until the aircraft is fully settled onto the runway and grip has taken place. Friction has transferred and the aeroplane is going to be able to steer effectively and not slide around. All right, let's talk about engine starts now. So we'll talk about taxiing as we head off for a takeoff, but engine start. So before we start up, first things first, we want to assess the area under the propeller. If there's soft, loose gravel, or hard gravel, but soft, loose dirt and gravel and that sort of stuff, we want to try and clear that away. Now, a lot of airplanes usually will have a small dustpan and broom or something like that in the baggage locker or wing locker or whatever. So use that. If not, that's where your boot or your foot comes in, and grab a branch, anything, and just dust away the main area under the propeller. Now, have a look on Instagram this week. I'll post a reel looking out the front of the propeller to show the vortice of air that exists underneath the prop. And that vortice is creating a low pressure system underneath the propeller, which picks up gravel. This is where your stone chips come from. And if we're operating at too high a RPM, it's pretty much impossible to avoid. But if we're operating at too high a RPM and stationary, this is where the prop damage is going to take place. All right. So make sure we've swept the area underneath the prop, remove any foreign objects that are going to cause problems. We then, before we start, we want to make sure we've got everything set up as much as possible. Now, I understand that some aircraft can't turn radios and things on. If we do, then they usually will cut out and then reboot, and that way you'll lose frequencies and stuff. But if you can pre-store frequencies and everything else in there, do all that. Do as much as possible so that we're minimizing the time on the ground stationary with the prop running. Now, once the engine's stopped, if we've done a good job and swept it all away, then it'll be fine sitting there. Nice low idle, plug everything in, set up your GPS, your flight plan, and whatever else needs to be done. Make your radio call. And then once we start moving, the plan is to start and continue to move. So when we're taxiing, we want to keep the power setting low. So we just need to smoothly increase the power just enough to get it going, feed off the brakes, just let it roll. And once it gets going, then bring the power back to minimize picking up any stone chips and stuff. If we're going to do run-ups, then we do those on the run. All right. But generally speaking, you've probably just arrived, so run-ups aren't required. We've just got to do all our pre-takeoff checks. Make your taxi call. If need be, make your taxi, line up and rolling call if everything's all close by. It depends on your location. Keep an eye out for other traffic. Make sure it's clear, and then you're good to go. Really try and avoid braking if you can help it, and definitely try and avoid coming to a stop. So the idea is we want to line up onto the runway, keep rolling, and that way we're going to minimize the chance of picking up stones. So once we do that, again, taking some weight off the nose wheel, back pressure, smoothly increasing the power and ensuring that the aircraft is accelerating smoothly and nice and straight on the rudder. Again, we don't want to be having P factor and other things pulling us hard left or right and stopping or causing the airplane to be sliding all over the place. Nice and stable, nice and steady. As we rotate, just normal, take off. Don't want to be hoiking it back or anything like that. We don't have a tail strike or anything like that. And the airplane will just climb out just like normal. All good. Potentially with a complete cloud of bull dust and chaos behind you, which you can't see, but that's fine. That's just what it's like flying in the bush and flying on some of these airstrips. All right, so I hope all of that gives you a bit of an idea. Operating on unsealed airstrips and unfamiliar airstrips, strip inspections are absolutely prudent. As far as joining circuits and that sort of thing go, you can join downwind, join crosswind, whatever else. But if you haven't been there before, cannot recommend a strip inspection enough. And now this is not a student pilot thing. I want to make that really clear. I was doing strip inspections. Well, we basically do one in the Mallard every time we fly over the water because we're having a look at the water conditions and making an assessment. I did several strip inspections in the King Air at Care Flight because we went to stations that we'd never been to before. So we did a low-level strip inspection, checking it all out, making sure that we were happy. This is a normal commercial operation procedure. This is not just something in the mods and a training thing. So if you're not doing strip inspections, if you're not doing prec searches, get your school, get your instructor to show you how to do it. And if they don't know how to do it, make sure they find out and make sure that you learn these skills because they're absolutely crucial to your handling and your job prospects when you get up here, because it is definitely going to be something that you use from time to time. All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening. It's been great having you all. You know how to get hold of me, info@trentrobinsonaviation.com.au. Please follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Lots of great content goes out there, heaps of educational material. And if you haven't seen already as well, every week, roughly on a Wednesday or Thursday, on Patreon, I'm releasing a short article, a whole heap of topics from beginning to fly right through to airline stuff and everything in between. So make sure you get on there. Some are open to the public, some are for members only. You can be a member for free. So jump on there, patreon.com/Flight Training Australia, and sign up for a free membership. If you're loving what you're hearing, if you're loving what you're reading and everything that I'm doing here, then I would love to have you on board for a membership. There's 3 tiers, remember, and it is all completely tax deductible. All right, everyone, take care. Please stay safe, and I look forward to talking to you next week. In the meantime, please, guys, and remember the golden rule: aviate, navigate, communicate. See ya.